G'day everyone, Spud here from Spud's Games. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video, I'm going to be running you through the BVM-2010P. As you can see it, where is it? Over that way. There we go. It's one of the BVMs that I picked up from that bundle a little while ago. Just go back a few videos, you'll see it. But I haven't had a chance to do a full video on it. So today's the day. Let's go. So before we get stuck into the actual monitor itself, let's just have a look at some of the specifications. So some of the features we've got is the high resolution tube with the super fine pitch. Now 0.3 is pretty fine pitch for a monitor of this type. And the resolution 900 TV lines at the center of the picture, which is quite high, one of the highest that I've seen. Particularly around that era of monitors that were built. Normally they're around the 600 to 800, so to get to 900, is quite unique and it has quite a high resolution. Another thing to note here, it does accept extra cards. So we see there the list of cards that it does have. This one in particular that I've got has the PAL comb filter and PAL decoder in it. You can get an NTSC decoder and comb filter as well. The RGB component that's already installed into this monitor. And the other ones there, particularly the one of interest there, the auto setup adapter. I've seen pictures of it before, but I've never actually used it. But that's quite unique as well. The other ones are just fairly standard. So, but you know, at least you could get different cards for this. So having a look at the control buttons on the front, we've got there on the left, you can see a auto setup probe input. Never used one before, but this monitor does have that particular feature. Has a degauss button, different scan modes. I will say that little square on the left is quite handy when you're setting up geometry because it shrinks the picture right down. You can see right to the edges and get your geometry perfect. Then we've got our RGB guns here we can turn off individually. Another one here is our blue only screen if we need to. Comb and trap filters there. Then we come along to our color and brightness buttons or knobs here we can adjust. And we can turn these to wherever we need to. As well as there's an auto, when we look at inside in the drawer, you'll see what I mean. We can have it set to a default or we can set it manually via these buttons here. So there's two ways you can do it. An auto or a manual way of doing it. And then on the end we have our inputs, A and B, external sync and a mono mode. And then we've got the green power button on the end. Okay, so I've just got the camera now set up in the garage. This one was one of the three that I picked up. It no longer works. It has a problem, which I'll explain in a minute. But it had the covers off. I didn't want to take the one off inside. It had all the covers on there and it was all set up. So it's good that I had the covers off this already because I can now explain to you guys what's internal to these and why these monitors are really, really good. So over here we've got our input A and B, in and out, which is just standard composite. This one is set up for PAL, has the PAL decoder in it, as well as external sync. You've got your RGB inputs in and out over here, which also share this external sync BNC connector here. We've got an output over here as well, and then we've got a remote socket here. Down the bottom we've got our standard kettle cord power plug, fuse, and then standard selectable 110, 100, 120, or 220 to 240. Now being Australia, obviously we're working off 240, which is now actually 230 volts. Now as we walk around this monitor, what I'm going to do is first up, I'll show you this drawer. So this is the reason why these monitors are so good. If I just pull that out, you'll see here, apologies for the light there, it just takes a minute to adjust. There is a lot of control buttons on that particular panel. I like the way it hides, I like how it hides away underneath there. But essentially, this does not have any electronic service menu. It's all done analog pots and buttons. But some of the stuff here you can see you can do is absolutely fantastic. Like if I look here, this is all our convergence. You can see every spot on the screen over here via pot, and it tells you here, you can do vertical and horizontal convergence in all these sections on the screen. You've also got your geometry adjustments over here. And one thing you'll note here, not only does it do side pin, but it also does top and bottom pin. You know, you've also got your centering over here, you've got your width, your heights, etc. So it does all that. So over here is your input select. So inside there, normally we'd have it on RGB and we'd have it on NTSC as well. But when we're on composite, we can't actually select NTSC, it'd be on PAL because this has the PAL decoder in it. Now you can do all your contrasts and whatnot. Now these pots here are associated with these knobs on the front. So you can set these to however you desire. But you can also come and press these buttons on the front here, if you can see that, for each individual one, and then manually adjust it as well if you need to. If you have that button pressed out, then it will just default back to whatever you've got them set up here. We can adjust our RGB guns. And the other really good thing about this as well, it does have a standard pattern generator, which I've just got to find out where that is. It is on here somewhere. Matrix, crosshatch. Here, we've got the crosshatch here as well. So it's got its own crosshatch pattern that we can get on the screen to do all the adjustments. We don't need the 240p test suite. So I'm just going to do a bit of a walk around of the monitor now. Now the reason why these monitors are so good is part of the reason with these cards. So all these cards are fully removable. They just plug in there. If I zoom in, you might be able to see on this spot here, you can see better. They just plug into, you know, if you're familiar with ESA slots in computers, very similar to that. And essentially all these boards here would make up, or part make up, what you're familiar with as an A board in a standard PVM. But the beauty of these is they're all pluggable. So if you ever want to do a recap on these, and this is just not these boards, I'll run you through the other ones in a minute. Everything is pluggable in this monitor, so you can just pull this card out, recap it, put it back in, test it to make sure it works, pull this card out, do the same thing over and over. Now you'll see there is one card here missing, and that's for good reason, which I'll run you through in a minute. But you can see the advantages already of this particular monitor, especially when you're recapping. You can just do one at a time. You don't have to fully disassemble the monitor itself. You can just pull them out, recap it, plug them back in, not a problem. One thing I will say is one disadvantage of these is if you do need to start probing on the card itself, very difficult to get probes inside there. Sony developed what they call a Z card, which was essentially an extension card which allowed you to have this card out further, plugged in, and it was just basically an extension slot for that card, so you could have the card out and do your testing while it was outside of it, while the monitor was still fully functional. So from these cards we'll go up to the top. So this is, I'll just see if I can zoom out a little bit here. This is an RGB amplifier board. Now if you do pick up one of these, the first thing you should do is look at the capacitors on this particular board. All the ones I had, they needed to be recapped. The monitors worked, but they all were out of spec, and to the point where one of the capacitors actually blew on this, which I think was one of these ones here. It might have been this one here, sorry. Or was there one over in the corner over this side? Might have been this one here. But anyway, when that capacitor went, it actually shorted out something on the card that was here. So the capacitor wasn't only bad, but it actually created a short underneath it. And yeah, it caused a problem further down. So this board works. Everything works in this monitor except for that card that you saw and removed. We have an issue on that card because of that short. Now, as I said, this is the RGB amplifier board. Normally you find these on the neck board, all these transistors and capacitors and resistors. But Sony have separated this away from the neck board, and the neck board is really, really basic. I'm not going to pull it off, but essentially it's just your standard socket on the back with a couple of other components. There's nothing too special. That you can see these cables, they all come up to this board here, and then this board from these go down to the cards that are on the side. So while we're at the back here, a couple of things to note. I won't pull it out because you don't really need to, but you'll see this long heatsink here section. That's the power supply. So you undo this this screw here, and the one on the other side, you grab these rails and you slide it out. Now that power supply, I think it sits about 200 mil deep, I suppose, but it's fully modular. You just slide it out. There's a couple of plugs at the front. Disconnect those plugs and you've got full access to then take that power supply away and do whatever you need to do to it, whether it's recap it or do some tests on it. It doesn't have to be, in the monitor itself. And this is what I was talking about, why these monitors are so great. They're all fully modular. And that also includes these big babies up here. So this is all your horizontal section. It has a lot of heavy duty components on here, as well as some big capacitors. Now once again, you'd normally find this on your A board, but it is fully modular. So you undo these, and each of these fins, there's made up of 3 sections. You can see it if I just move the camera at the top, you can see where they separate. You undo them and you can pull each section out as you need to, do whatever your tests need to be, and then just plug it back in again. So once again, if you're recapping, it makes life really easy. You just do one thing at a time, plug it back in, test it, and then move on to the next one. So interesting to note here, the manufacture date, July 1989. Now I don't know whether that's the tube manufacture date or the actual monitor manufacture date, because I was led to believe these are sort of early 90s. So it could be just the tube, but if not, it must be one of the earlier model ones that were actually made. So just before we actually jump in and have a look at this monitor, and I'll fiddle around with the settings, I'll show you how all that's done. I thought I'd show you an example of the card. So this is the card that was damaged. So this is an example of one. You can just see here the slot here, which would slot into that backbone with the rest of the cards. Now this card is damaged. I have recapped it, but that short on the capacitor up on the RGB amplifier board has blown something on this. I think one of the ICs has gone on it. I'm just not sure which one. There is, as you can see, a heap of components on this. And you can see when this is in situ, like you can't really get test probes in here to do it. There is a couple of spots on here which you could get to, but really it doesn't really tell you much. You need to measure a few other things. So without that Z card or that extension card, it makes life difficult. But I'll get around to giving this a good test. But the advantage, I suppose, is having two monitors. So I was able to determine the problem was this card after the recap. The problem that it now faced was on this card, because I was able to swap cards from this and that backwards and forwards and just basically rule out, find out where the problem was. So once again, the advantage of being fully modular and having two of these monitors made life easy when I was trying to diagnose what the actual problem was or where the problem was. So one really cool feature that Sony did think about when they were designing this geometry board and whatnot was something really unique. So I'll just pull this out. Now you can see if I was a technician, you'd have to stand up looking over the top of this to do your settings. But if you're doing this all day, and I'll just adjust this down a bit. If you're doing that all day on different sets, then you're standing up all day. So what they did was they actually made this adjustable, this tray. So there's a couple of little gold buttons on the side. I'll just find them. There's one here and one on this side. And what you can actually do is just push them in and you can lower that down. And now it makes life really easy when you're sitting down trying to do all these adjustments. You can sit in your chair right in front of the screen and do all your adjustments without having to get up, stand up all the time to do them. Okay, so now let's just take a quick look at the geometry of this particular monitor. It has really, really good geometry, I must say. You can see here from the test the 240p test suite, the geometry is near perfect. I can't really fault it at all. Yeah, there's no real issues that I see. Now this is one of the best features of this monitor is these convergence adjustments. So all up, I think I counted 30 spots where you can adjust the convergence. Normally with a CRT, you're pretty much restricted to your vertical convergence and it all adjusts at once. I know some of the high-end BVMs, you can do that manually in different spots, but the beauty of this monitor is every single one of these pots represents a position on the screen, whether it's your vertical or whether it's your horizontal. And you can see over this side, there's all these spots here you can do the vertical and all these spots that you can do the horizontal. Now, each one of these pots resembles a section. So if we look at this one here, this one here is at the top, okay, on vertical. So it would do your vertical section just in this part here. Pot number 2 here will do the one next to it, just here. And likewise for horizontal. So pot 5 over here will just do the horizontal in this particular section up here. And if we relate that back to the screen, I'll just come back here. So those two pots there, we're looking at just adjusting the convergence here and here. Whether we will need to do that, it's actually probably divided into 3, so probably more like here and here. Okay, so it gives you a lot of adjustments on the actual TV itself or the monitor itself, to the point where you could spend all day in there if you wanted to, but there's really no need. And just so you know that I wasn't lying or mucking around, I've actually scanned this screen and I've found a little bit of a spot here. You can see just those little last 2 blue dots and maybe the second white line there in. You can see the convergence there is just a little bit out. So if I come down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pot, I want to do horizontal, and I also want to do mainly just horizontal actually. I don't really need to do anything vertical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just maybe sort of pots 9, pot 7, pot 1 and pot 3 in the horizontal section, which is this one here. So I'll move it back up, and hopefully you guys, let's see if I can zoom in a bit more there. Just on this section here, you can see it's just a little bit out. Okay, so hopefully the camera will pick this up as I'm adjusting it. We'll see. So the screwdriver is in there. You can see I'm just winding that back a little bit, and you can see that comes back into nicely, just there. Okay, I don't think there's any more spots on this screen that really warrant anything to worry about. Maybe just up as we travel up a little bit, maybe just a little bit there. So we'll just adjust the next pot up a little bit. There we go. There we go there. It's pretty nice there. And let's go up further if those, see if those ones have gone all right up further. Yep, they look fine. Scanning across, the rest of it looks pretty good. There's really nowhere else I need to adjust it. Righto, so what I've done is I've actually put the crosshatch pattern on the monitor itself, using that rather than the 240p test suite. And because these lines are much thinner, I can see much more of convergence where they might be. So this one's down the bottom left hand corner. So if I come over here, look at this, bottom left is pot 6 for the horizontal. So let's just go back up, and we should see that come back in nicely. There we go. Adjust that, and then likewise at the top here you'll see that one there, which is pot 5 on the horizontal. Bring that back in nicely. There is actually a slight little one on the vertical as well. I don't know how well the camera will pick that up, but I'm just going to adjust that back in a little bit there as well. So that to me now has got all the convergence looking really good across the screen. So now let's have a look at the picture quality. I've just got a game on here, Samurai Showdown. The camera's going to find this hard to pick this up, but you can see how nice and high resolution that is for 240p gaming. It's really crisp, really nice colors. You know, it certainly does a fantastic job, this high resolution monitor. And I must say it's probably my favorite monitor in the collection. So much so that I'm actually using it now as my main monitor over the 2950 that I had. Yes, the 2950 was much bigger, but this one, the quality of this monitor, the quality of the picture is much better than what the quality of the picture was on the 2950. Right, so let's talk about the positives and negatives of this particular monitor. First, let's go to the positives. Positive number one, the high resolution tube itself. It's a fantastic tube. I don't know whether this one's got low hours or not, but it really does give a great picture. That 900 TVL certainly does pop out, and the colors are just fantastic on it, so I certainly can't fault it. The second positive is obviously the amount of adjustments you can do in regards to convergence there. With all those pots, all those adjustments, those convergence freaks out there who, you know, think they can pick up every single minute detail of problems with convergence. I'm not one of those, you know. When you're playing a game, I don't really pick it up unless it's really bad. So, but you can adjust until your heart's content. Pretty much anything you can adjust on this till your heart's content. So that's the second positive. Third positive is if anything does go wrong with these monitors, they're fully pluggable in regards to fully modular. Everything you can just unscrew, take out, work on it, and then plug it back in again. You don't have to take the whole monitor apart to get access to the components. Undo a few screws, pop out whatever you need to pop out, recap it, do whatever you need to do, pop it back in again, and everything's great. So from a repair perspective, these monitors are really good. Some negatives: it doesn't come with a speaker, so you are reliant on external speakers, which can be a bit of a problem with people setting that up in room and all that sort of stuff. So I use a Sonos speaker, just have the breakout from the SCART, the sound go through the Sonos. Does a fantastic job. But yeah, this monitor doesn't come with speakers. There's no options for speakers. So be prepared, you're gonna have to find some way of getting sound out. Second downer, which is for me is probably the biggest downer, there's no S-Video inputs on these whatsoever. Even with the option cards, there's just no option for S-Video. Now, I do have a couple of S-Video consoles / computers here, my Commodore 64 being one, the N64 being another one. So I'm going to have to resort to using composite on this particular monitor. However, the composite on this is fantastic. You know, the S-Video does look good on other ones, I must admit, but I've played Commodore 64 on this and N64 on composite. And because you can adjust the colors so finely, really it's not a big hassle to play those particular two on composite. But they're really the only two problems that I could find with this monitor. Everything else is just fantastic. In fact, it's probably my favorite monitor that I have in the collection, bar none. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. And until the next video, I'll see you then.